Hi guys, thank you for watching, welcome. This video is focused on pelvis and how to find a neutral alignment in our pelvis. Our pelvis is primarily made for stability. It is the structure that holds our spine in place. Pelvis means basin, so literally all the internal organs that are placed here, all the different muscles that are inserted and originate from our bony structure. Now, pelvis is made of three bones, two innominate bones, pubic bone and a sacrum. There's a few important anatomical terms I would like to introduce you to, also a few important landmarks on our body. Please place your hands on your pelvis, and what you can easily feel here, easy to palpate with your fingers, is your ilium bones, those bony edges, iliac spine, and right at the front you can feel those two bony landmarks in front of your pelvis, ASIS points, anterior superior iliac spine. We've got them also at the back, where the dimples are PSIS, posterior superior iliac spine. Right here we've got your pubic bone, right above your genitals. And at the bottom of your pelvis you've got your ischial tuberosities, commonly called sit bones. There are two actions we need to establish first. Anterior pelvic tilt. So imagine your pelvis is like a bowl with water and you want to pour the water out in front. So what happens with your pelvis is tilting forward and your pubic bone goes back, your ASIS points goes forward, and you can feel here, you can see the extension in your lumbar spine. Now we do the opposite, posterior tilt in the pelvis. So now your pubic bone goes forward, your ASIS points goes back, and you have a lumbar flexion. So again, anterior, and posterior, anterior, and posterior. When we are looking for a neutral pelvis, we want to find a combination of both actions. So the way to find it is come back to your landmarks, those bony points on the front of your pelvis, and those two landmarks we want to place in one vertical line with a pubic bone. So again, pubic bone and ASIS points are in one vertical line, and that is your neutral pelvis. Some of those pelvic imbalances can directly affect our everyday lives and of course our yoga practice, causing us pain, different injuries, different joints, dysfunction. For example, sacroiliac joint. This joint works in its most optimal way when the pelvis is neutral, with its locking mechanism when sacrum meets the innominate bones. That's why it's so important to work on the neutral pelvis alignment. How do we stabilize our pelvis? The first thing to establish is to find out what is the pattern in your body. Is it more of a posterior tilt or anterior tilt? Secondly, you need to know what muscles need to get recruited. Some of the muscles are weak and short, so they need to get strengthened and lengthened. For example, if you have more of a posterior tilt in your pelvis, it is most likely that your flexors and your erector spinae muscles, your spine muscles, are tight. You also need to strengthen your deep core muscles. If you have more of a posterior tilt, possibly it might be your hamstrings, also your glutes that need to get stretched. Let's go directly to our yoga practice where I can apply and explain everything we talked about. So you can see in our Tadasana position, a neutral standing pose, you can focus on the pelvis movement. So again, revisiting the anterior tilt of the pelvis and the posterior, you can see how the thighs coming forward and there's a flattening in the back of your spine. Now again, the anterior by your thighs goes back and you have extension in your lower spine. So now let's find a neutral. The pelvis aligned with your AS-IS points. Here's another great pose to find those actions, cat and cow stretch. We'll start with an anterior tilt in the pelvis. So you can see the extension in my lumbar spine and my sit bones are lifted. Now the posterior tilt, which is the opposite. Anterior tilt and the posterior. Now let's find a neutral pelvis. So I keep my core muscles engaged. If you look at my lumbar spine, there's a slight curve. So I'm respecting the natural curves in my spine, my lumbar, my thoracic, and my cervical spine. So often in a yoga class we can see common misalignments in a plank position and different patterns of pelvic rotation. Sometimes you will see something like this, which is the anterior tilt in the pelvis. So sit bones are lifted. Now the opposite would be a posterior tilt. So keeping the pelvis too low and sort of hanging in the pelvis without engaging the core. So it's more of a postural action in the pelvis. Now you want to find a neutral alignment in your pelvis. Stabilizing your core, corseting your abdomen, and the whole structure around your pelvis is stable. One of those great poses to observe those actions is Anjaneya Asana, low lunge. What is happening here is we often rush into the hip stretch. You can see what is happening in my pelvis is a deep anterior tilt, and my lumbar spine is deeply extended. Now, I want to back off first and work on my stability, finding a neutral pelvis, lengthening the tailbone, lifting the pubic bone, engaging my core stabilizing muscles, the transversus abdominis, rectus abdominis, so the rib points draw in, lifting the pubic bone and engaging my pelvic floor muscles. Now once I have a stable structure, I can go slowly into the hip stretch, working on lifting the pubic bone and trying to do more of a posterior tilt in my pelvis. You can extend your arms straight. It is a very different experience in this pose. Thank you so much for watching. If you're interested to learn more about your body and new techniques, dive deep into the teachings and wisdom of yoga, please follow us yogaformen.com and subscribe to our Vimeo channel. Thank you so much again. See you next time.